I'll do it. Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome back to Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy, the Doc and Buddy Show. Just for you, we're happy to have you back. Back by popular demand is the one and only Buddy Mellon, better known to me as Comrade Budinsky.
Yes, I have been getting my information from the communists. So it adds a whole other layer. Most people in ufology completely discount the communists, but they're heavily involved with.
I heard that they have a base under Antarctica.
No, it's the South Pole. It's the North Pole it's too different. It's very complicated. I can't believe that I ran into you today under that circumstance. Can you explain to the audience how and what the F happened today? That's statistically, it was very, very, very weird, Doc. I mean, let's be honest, that was really freaking weird.
Yes, I mean, the truth is I've been working with the Galactic Federation. We wanted to get you on tape in front of Madison Square Park, and it worked, you see. The only thing we didn't get out of you was getting to you to admit who you really work for, Comrade Budinsky, because, you know,
there's information.
We have ways of getting to the the truth.
We can slowly release this information each episode, and by the end, you'll find out the ultimate group I'm actually working for.
Well, you're starting to look like Nicki Minaj.
Well, thank you.
No, the truth is, folks, he isn't Nicki Minaj's alien love twin or anything like this. No. It turns out that I had been intending to interview him, the interview we're about to do for you right now. And I was thinking, I need to get in touch with him. And I'd like to do it tonight because I just have this feeling like we need to talk about the Navy's connection to the UFO phenomena, the Tic Tacs. I don't know why, there's a lot. He did a great video a couple of days ago. I've been thinking about it. I thought, I got to get this guy on the show. We have to talk about it for you to flesh it out a little more. Okay? So I'm saying, okay, I'm going to send a text to Buddy. I'm out there at Grand Central Station planning to go down Fifth Avenue to that area around Madison Square Park. So I text him, and he's across the street from Madison Square Park doing, on business.
I'm literally across the street from him. He's on a bench across the street from me in Manhattan.
So we're right next to each other in Manhattan. I mean, we could have been miles and miles apart. We're usually sometimes 1,000 miles apart.
Yes.
Last summer when we did that interview, we were 3,000 miles apart or something crazy. And
yeah, absolutely.
And here we are. He's there. I'm there. 5 minutes later, did you post the video?
I did post the video. It's gotten some really cute remarks from the fans and friends.
So we got to meet in person.
The first time. It's really weird that you were wanting to meet that night. You wanted to see me tonight.
Yes.
And within minutes of that thought, literally.
It happened. It literally happened. There he's walking on the street. I said, how could this be? I mean, this is my neighborhood. He's not allowed to.
And I don't go into the city much, and I'm in the Bronx or I'm upstate. And so the fact that lately I've been in the Bronx a lot, but I don't even come into the city, for months sometimes, So it was really, 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 really stunning and cool and beyond statistically weird. So
beyond statistically weird, and we got to catch up and share a lot of info, and we agreed to do this show for you later tonight. Here we are.
Yeah. And maybe it's important then. Maybe that's why that all happened, that this is an important show for some reason.
Yeah, I had the feeling it was important. So there you have it. Synchronicity. We actually got to meet and compare notes. And, he was better looking than I expected, I have to tell you.
Yes, and Dr. Hein is buff. He rides a bike. It's a badass bike. He's got the best and everything. He's got these badass gloves like he's a mixed martial artist. You would not want to run into him on the streets. And if you know anything about Manhattan, you have to be a badass to ride any kind of vehicle or anything with two wheels versus the cabs and all the craziness and stuff that happens.
Oh, yeah.
I worry about you, Doc. Thankfully, you have a great helmet with an alien on it and the alien on the bike. It was awesome. It was just great to meet you. I mean, I was happy, as you can tell in the video.
Yes, I've got my little squeaky alien head, and I didn't make the sound for you, but it cracks people up. It actually gets. I have an air horn, but that doesn't get people's attention in Manhattan. Who cares about a truck air horn? That
Right?
little squeaky alien makes people at the intersection turn and they crack up. And they look at the little alien and they go, ah! It's attention. It's squeaky and weird, and it works. It's subtle. And in Manhattan, when you're riding your bike, it's called anger management. You have to practice being, not taking things personally. You have to
Happy place.
Imagine the Maharishi is right next to you. The Maharishi's grandfather and his ancestors. And you have to be good. And you don't want to be, but you have to say, hey, I'm a meditator. I do not break the windows of cars just because they cut me off and they should have known better. We're just going to show a little patience. And, once a month I lose my temper.
Oh, it's so easy on the roads of Manhattan.
I know, but you don't want to listen. We have to be examples. Honestly, I really believe we need to be examples. And you can yell. It's okay to scream a little bit as long as you actually don't hurt someone, do some damage. It's okay to let it out. Some of those cars are acting obnoxious, but hey, it's good and it keeps you awake and it's a lot of fun and it's a very efficient. Listen, I have to tell people something before we get on to our topic tonight. Manhattan and New York City is really improving the biking structure there. I mean, buddy, even today over on 29th Street, new bike lane. It used to be what's called shared base. Well, they've right-sized it again on 29th and reduced the traffic for cars to this big, and the bike lane is nice and this big. So I got to give New York City credit for continually improving the biking infrastructure system there. It's just getting better. And that's why I like to use it. And I realize there's a risk. I just, pay attention. Don't do anything dumb. Don't go too fast. Stop at the lights. That's what I do.
And you wear the safety equipment. And that's really a key factor because,
lights, you need a lot of lights. You need to
helmet,
communicate, pay attention, make eye contact. And don't hit pedestrians with their cell phones. Don't hit the cell phone zombies that walk into your bike lane, even though you want to. Because
I had a motorcycle and potholes are.
Oh my God. They could swallow your bike.
It's humongous in New York.
You really have to have you have to have it together to be a biker in Manhattan. And listen, it's a very efficient way to get around. It's faster. It's more pleasant than the subway. It doesn't cost much to have. I love it. And I know it's dangerous. I just believe that my spidey senses will protect me. As a remote viewer, I believe that I can sense danger and you feel cars coming behind you. I don't know. It's worked so far. I haven't had any accidents yet.
Good. Well, I'm feeling very good about your future in it. So be good and be careful. And we'll all be keeping you in our thoughts and prayers.
All right. Thank you. So on to tonight's topic. You did a video a couple days ago. 37 videos was the name of your video, and you released, I don't know if that's leaked information, I gather it was maps of U.S. naval operating areas for training practice for these different carrier strike groups. Am I correct?
Correct. There's different training areas on the West Coast and the Gulf of Mexico and on the East Coast, but then the U.S. government works in cooperation with other nations to do different naval exercises with them. And some of them are just strictly naval, some are naval and air exercises, some of them are land, naval, and air exercises. So, and remarkably, the U.S. has encountered since 2002 a humongous majority of almost all of our major naval operations exercises have been encountered by or have had encounters with craft. And like the Nimitz encounter, and Luis Elizondo has admitted this, they talked about having at least 24 videos. I was speaking with Grant, and he was saying that someone from the camp said that there was something like 1,000 videos. They had so much stuff, as Luis Elizondo said, they couldn't, it was so much information, data. They were worried about foreign espionage. They couldn't maintain the amount of data they had coming in. It was too much. And the Navy has massive amounts. The Office of Naval Intelligence, ONI, has tons of info. And when I saw this document that had the initials of that intelligence agency, and it talks about almost every major naval exercises since 2002 has had incursions. It kind of makes you stand back a little bit and say, what's going on? I mean, this can't be just a reflective of having improved sensors and being able to see farther and more accurately and with better fidelity. It has to be a trend of some kind. Or this has been going on all along and maybe we're just now finding out. I think it's stunning. I think it kind of goes along with the report from Victor Viggiani, who got the NORAD documents, and I showed some other NORAD documents that talked about the 1,500 unknown tracks and having about 75 a year intercepts. You don't intercept a meteorite coming in from space. You intercept something that's controllable and that you can scramble a jet after. And they intercepted a lot of them with their own jets. I didn't know that NORAD had their own jets, but NORAD does have their own jets.
Yeah, their own jets, right.
So there may be a trend going on here, and the trend might be, and if you look at a couple different surveys out, there was a little bit of a news in the UFO community, how these two different studies were saying there was a big drop in UFO reportings from the public. I can't remember the range of how many years this drop has started. So there's a drop with the public and an increase with the military. Is that what's happening? And is that a new trend? And what is that foreboding? What is that saying?
Well, let me ask you something here, buddy, for a second. Are we talking about documents that were released from a FOIA request, or are these leaked documents? Are these classified? Are these
some of these the documents that I have are leaked documents. The documents like Victor Viggiani, those were done from FOIAs, and anyone can get those. Those are public documents. Things like the Chris Mellon leak information that you can go online and find that. So this is all real stuff. It's really stunning stuff, and it's interesting that the DOD has come to the conclusion about several things that really tie into stuff that we care a lot about, Dr. Hein. That's the powers of the mind. And if you indulge me and take a second to find this document, I'll read you from slide number 9. And this corresponds to another document I can show or put a link to that supports the same thing. And it basically says that the government's greatest concerns are this list of things. And this list of things are all essentially things that have been proven recently to be powers of the mind. And if I can find this exact document, give me a moment. Oh, is this it? Okay, here we go. A scenario exists for an enemy of the United States to manipulate both physical and cognitive environments in order to penetrate U.S. facilities, influence decision makers, and compromise national security. These include weapons like psychotronic weapons, cognitive human interface, CHI, penetration of solid surfaces, instantaneous sensor disassembly, alteration, manipulation of biological organisms, anomalies in the space-time construct, and unique cognitive human interface experiences. And then the lists advantages. Well, first of all, we could just talk about those for a second. I mean,
well, what is this list again? What is this document? It sounds pretty heavy duty to me. It sounds pretty sinister. What is this?
This is what the government fears most from the AAVs. This is.
Well, what are you reading from there?
Program. This is slide number 9 from the Chris Mellon leak, and that slide is what they're pitching to Congress. They're going to Congress.
Thank you.
Showing them these different slides saying, this is what happened at the Nimitz incident. This is real.
That is pretty serious. This is...
yes, they're saying serious. This is their biggest
SIRIUS. This is serious. No, this is pretty heavy-duty stuff, buddy. You're talking about... read this again. Go ahead.
I'm saying that their biggest concern is this
psychotronic
stuff.
Is
Think about it. The ability.
Wait, can you read it again? I'm trying to wrap my mind around this. This is a government prepared for a government brief. Go through it again.
The scenario exists for an enemy of the United States to manipulate both physical and cognitive environments in order to penetrate U.S. facilities, influence decision makers, and compromise national security. With these following weapons:
positively evil. Go ahead.
Psychotronic weapons, cognitive human interface, CHI, penetration of solid surfaces, instantaneous sensor disassembly, alteration, manipulation of biological organisms, anomalies in space-time construct, and unique cognitive human interface experiences. Let me try and spell this out for you.
Please do.
This information is based on ATIP's study for all those years, all the experiences they had, all the encounters they got back from the military. So when they do their after action reports of all the different stuff that happened, all the effects on the people, all the effects on the machinery, because as you remember, a lot of these craft are shutting off the weapon systems when we're trying to click on them. So they say things like instantaneous sensor disassembly.
Yes.
These craft AAVs are using some sort of thing to disassemble the sensors, not just de-encrypt them and zap them with some electromagnetic wave. They're doing something different. You know, when you go down and you change the computers at a nuclear launch site, those places are shielded from electromagnetic frequencies. So it's not like they're sending something that we normally traditionally understand to those machines to change them. You know what I mean? They have to be operating with a different field, they're operating on a different way of physics that we're not understanding. And when they say something like instantaneous sensor disassembly, or the ability, what was it about passing through physical solid surfaces? Oh, here it is. Penetration of solid surfaces. What are they saying, Doc? What are they saying, Doc?
It's everything that Stalin ever dreamed about, but now it's true. They couldn't do it back in the 40s.
But this is what the AAVs can do, and what the government wants to do this stuff.
It's something that every foreign government wants to do to other foreign governments, but now we're saying that the ETs can do it. I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. It's big. It's really big.
It gets worse.
Go ahead.
Or better, depending on your perspective.
Yes.
The Department of Defense advantages. The Department of Defense has been involved in similar experiments in the past.
Oh.
I did a video about all the different studies they've done on everything from Dr. John Alexander and Eric Davis's experiments on teleportation, and all the ones on retro psychokinesis, and all these different experiments. So that's what I believe what they're talking about. DOD has relationships with renowned subject matter experts. So they have relations with the doctors and professors and people like Hal Puthoff, who've been involved with the powers of the mind. The DOD controls several facilities where activities have been repeatedly detected. So they know they have locations.
Activities have been repeatedly detected.
So they know that there are locations that have repeat activities, so they can set up experiments or traps or other things. That's what they're saying. That's an advantage for the DOD. We know that they can come back to Malmstrom. We know that they're going to come back to Sandia. We know that they're going to come back to Los Alamos. We know that they're going to come back to all the nuclear sites, This is big, though. When you think about it, if you can do what a AV can do, not just the anti-gravity, hypersonic, invisibility stuff and through the different atmospheres, but if you can penetrate solid surfaces. And
I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to penetrate.
Well, that's the first time you make love. Never mind. Think about it. If you have the president in the most sheltered bunker in the back of that new wing, all the way in the back in that tiny little boardroom, boom, boom, boom.
They're here. They disassembled my solid surfaces.
Instantaneous light disassembly.
Light disassembly. Go ahead.
I think it's a good time to pay your power bill.
Go. Pray tell, do continue.
So basically, an AAV can, if the president's hiding in the most secure place possible, can penetrate that location and affect the president's mind, can affect the mind of decision makers. These are evil creatures. We should kill them all. No, I think these are some of the aspects of this psi phenomena. It's all different spokes on the same wheel. I think people like us who do, remote viewing have seen different things like aports and different strange phenomena that is part of this whole circle of phenomena. So I don't know if the government's going to be able to control it, but
we can agree this is really big, and I can imagine from the people who run the national security systems that this probably keeps them awake at night, because we know, if nothing else, these entities are persistent. I mean, they've been persisting for 70 years to get our attention.
Great point.
And they don't quit, and they do what they seem to want to do. I agree. It doesn't seem hostile to me in the least. It seems curious, inquisitive, scientific, neutral, sometimes beneficial, sometimes not. But overall, it seems that they're doing something. But so
what I worry about is that it's just their ability that they're worried about. They've detected that these advanced vehicles have the ability to do these things. And these abilities are the things that they're casting as threats. And yes, in isolation and just theoretically, they could be threats. But you have to base it on people's actions.
Well, I believe that Luis Elizondo and Hal Puthoff have said that there's no evidence that they are a threat so far. Hal
never heard that. I would love to hear that from them.
No, I've heard them say this. They said there's no evidence so far that they are a threat. And Elizondo has emphatically said, just because we don't understand what they're doing doesn't mean it's a threat.
That's great to hear them say that, despite the fact that they're going around Congress essentially saying that they're a threat and that they're dangerous.
How you get funding in that community, unfortunately. But Hal did say to us when we were talking with them, there's no evidence they're a threat. And then he said, well, they have shut down our missile facilities. And someone there said, yeah, they shut them down. But again, it might have just been pointing out to us their concern. And he agreed with that. It could be just sense of concern. We could be messing up their space-time continuum with our systems. And, right, atomic energy systems, nuclear systems are probably multidimensional in their effects, and so it would affect them in some way, and they may just, for out of self-preservation, be sending us a message, we're not going to, it's gone too far, we're not going to accept your toys. These toys are getting shut down, and we're going to continue to shut them down.
And they must know.
It's questionable whether
they must know. Any advanced civilization that gets to a certain point must know the power of breaking atoms. It must be something that doesn't, you can't miss that fact. If you're flying around in a Tic Tac, you don't, scientists don't discover that. They have to at some point. And when you do that, the toxicity of some of those elements and how much they affect any form of life.
Yes.
And the incredible duration that they are a toxic poison. So, to me, any being on this in this universe doesn't necessarily, even the explosion doesn't have to affect other universes, could look at the toxicness of this stuff, and if they care about a biological species, be like, hello, this is bad, you don't get it, this is how most species don't make it to the next level, hello. And what seems strange to me is that they're allowing us to see them, but not give us too much information, but not choosing to be completely invisible. It's this strange middle point where it makes you wonder, what is the goal of that? What is the, obviously it seems like they want us to learn our own lessons, but they can hint us a little bit, kind of like a parent, I'm not going to ride the bicycle for you, you have to ride it. and fall off, but
well, let me go back a second to these naval reports. You're claiming that these documents say that every major naval exercise since
not every, almost every. It's some crazy percentage. Yeah,
of large naval exercises have had these activities. Where does the 37 videos number come from?
KTLA came out recently, said that there's 24 videos, and on a piece of document that I have, it says 37. There's 37.
Okay. Are these all? What kind of craft are we talking about here? Tic Tacs,
Tic Tacs, saucers, Tic Tacs, and saucers.
All gamut of the Tic Tac continuum of craft.
Yeah, and the bean, the bean-shaped craft with the two little nodules in the center.
Yeah, that was seen over. It wasn't that the one that was seen over Italy in the early 70s that Italian pilot photographed.
Yep. And
remember that one over the airport?
Yep. And there's been
a notch at the top. That's why they knew it wasn't a balloon, because it had a distinctive cockpit.
Yeah. It's so
the whole gamut. So, will we get to see some of these videos? Is this
well, in the Chris Mellon leak, there's 4 videos that you can see that they're from the DoD, and they've been declassified by the DoD already. But in a declassification process, it's never just one agency that allows it to go, because sometimes it has influence on other departments and agencies and groups that are studying the same thing, but different aspects that may classification value. So there's pictures of those DVDs, but they haven't quite come out yet. And there apparently is 4 different new videos that are supposed to come out soon. Grant said something like there's an incredible number of these videos. So, and that's just from ATIP. So you realize that's just from military operations.
I think this is turning into a huge story, buddy. I mean, it's been a huge story. The DVD there you have, of course, you have the DVDs, or you have pictures of the DVDs.
Yeah,
you're the go-to guy for all this stuff for some reason that I can't quite figure out, but we'll get there someday. Yes. So this is, I mean, the longer it takes for this story to go public, we had a little break last December and the media picked it up for a week. There was a media feeding frenzy like I had never seen before for about a week or 2. Mm-hmm. And Fravor was on there. David Sex Fravor, I guess that's his middle name there.
Yeah, that was his code name from the document. Sex.
Code name.
Hopefully, Lieutenant, I heard a rumor, and I sent a letter to Lieutenant Commander Alex Ann Dietrich, who's the source number 1 from the Nimitz incident, that I outed her name and everyone hated me for putting her name out. But I sent her a letter last week. I emailed her. I just tried to be honest and open and share my thoughts and feelings, and beseech her to come forward for the sake of humanity and for the sake of this incredibly important and historic case. This case is so important. It's so historic. It's got so much high caliber evidence.
We were talking.
Kevin Day, too, the other sailor.
Kevin Day, he was on with George Knapp. But, when this story breaks into the media, this is not just a generalized UFO story. This is very specific with specific witnesses in a carrier group. What do they cost? $20 billion carrier group?
Yeah.
This is big. There's a lot of resources involved. There are a lot of witnesses, a lot of pilots, a lot of implications of canceling a training exercise because these vehicles seem to know ahead of time where the waypoints would be for these F-18s. And if it's happened repeatedly like this, it seems to me like a major cover-up. And as we were saying on the street before at the junction of Broadway and Fifth Avenue, this goes all the way back to Operation Mainbrace in 1952. I sent you that little article. They were reporting flying saucers in 1952. I mean, if you think there's a secret space program, 1952? Who could that be in 1952? We're just recovering from the Second World War. I mean, Germany was a wreck, and large portions of Russia were a wreck. And
Look at just how we manufactured metal then. Our metal manufacturing was nowhere near the way that you need to go through 3 different environments, the vacuum of space, our atmosphere, and underwater. Of course not. Of course not.
I don't know, what was the leading publicly known plane at the time in the 1950s? The P-51 Mustang or something? I mean,
yeah,
what would
propeller driven. You know what's amazing too, though, is they're not just seeing one craft. They're seeing scores. One of these documents says something like scores of them. So they're coming in not just 5 or 10. They're coming in scores. Scores is groups of 20. That's at least 40.
Did it say scores in the documents?
Yeah, scores. So they're tumbling from space.
Score and 20 years ago today are 4.
That's at least 40. So it could easily be 60.
Now, but Gut Buddy, you were telling me they were coming in from a specific direction and location. What was that?
Which ones? Oh, there was one in the Trident Juncture case, which is done with Norway, and that's a land, sea, and air. And it was coming from the north. It was like a straight shot north. It would come from out of the atmosphere as if it was coming down to the pole and then go towards them. But what they were noticing is something similar to the Nimitz, where it would come down with a group of them. And then only 1 or 2 would go that direction and the rest would go off another direction. And it makes me wonder, like the Nimitz case too. Remember, was it Nimitz? I'm not sure from which video it says, oh, look on the S, there's a shitload of them or something. He says something on the audio about there being a bunch of them on the radar. He doesn't say the correct number.
Is that the Nimitz audio or is that the Florida audio?
I'm not sure if that's good. I can't remember. But
there's a whole bunch of them. Look at the ASA.
Yes. Where are the other ones going? What are they doing? What the F is going on here, guys? No,
we don't know. We have no idea what's going on. I mean, what are they doing? I mean, okay, so in Operation Mainbrace, that's also in the North Sea. That Operation Mainbrace is the first ever NATO sea exercise, or the largest of its type after the formation of NATO after World War II.
I bet they had something nuclear in that fleet.
Must be, because if you remember Bob Dean, who passed away a few weeks ago.
Yeah, sadly.
I used to talk with Bob at these UFO conferences, and for those of you that don't remember, he was the one that worked at SHAPE, Supreme Headquarters Allied Command, in Brussels, I believe it was, for NATO.
Wow.
And he said that one night someone came over and said, hey, nothing was going on. You want to see something interesting? And he takes them into a safe and shows them, according to Bob, who's written me a very thick book of the types of species that were here on the planet, ET species.
Wow.
And of course, the one that scared them, there was the gray type, the Nordic type, another type, and one that looked human. I asked Bob, I said, Bob, were these humans that were from somewhere else? Are there humans on other planets that look like us, or were they just lookalikes? And he said it didn't say, which is a very good answer because he wasn't making it nice. He said the document didn't say. But he said this is the one that scared them because they were so much like us that they could have infiltrated the government. The document he read said they could already have infiltrated the government and the military. You wouldn't be able to tell them apart. So he said the reason NATO did this study was because of the amount of espionage at the time. They wanted to keep it in-house and did not want to share it outside with the other intelligence agencies, for a good reason, by the way. They were thoroughly infiltrated by their own, agents from the East Bloc. And so NATO kept it within. What Bob said, which reminded me of what you said just now, he said, the reason they did this study is there were these objects that would come out of East Germany or something. They'd come up along the border of East and West Germany, and then they would turn north and go towards the Arctic or something like this. And he said they always did the same thing. Every week they would come out, a bunch of them, and eventually NATO said, well, who is this? That's how this all started, and they ended up with creatures that look just like you and me, and we don't know if they are you and me or who they are, that are basically human lookalikes. Or, maybe they are human. Maybe there are relatives. I don't know. Bob didn't know either. unfortunately, Bob's no longer with us. We can't ask him, but he said this was a pretty thick book, the appendix, with the he looked and saw the sketches of, back then, he said there were 4 types in the 60s that NATO knew about. According to Clifford Stone, another witness who worked in crash retrievals, one of Steve Greer's witnesses, that number had gone from 4 to the 70s. It was now like 40, if I'm paraphrasing. Up to the 80s, it now was over 100 species we're talking about, folks. So if you have any kids in the room that are scared by this, turn it off. We're talking about hundreds of species that are roaming the earth, and some of them are your neighbors. Mm-hmm. And I could see if this is really true, buddy, I won't go off on this topic much farther because we want to go back to the Navy. I mean, this could be a reason not to share it. We don't want people panicking and going after their Navy.
So many levels to that. Let's say that's possible, but let's say it's not. Let's say that they just are incredible. This is something that I've pondered.
Okay.
All these craft have smaller craft, and they keep getting smaller and smaller. We have nanotechnology. Why shouldn't they have nanotechnology? They have metamaterials that can make anything invisible. I bet that around the ground level, there are probably probes that are using metamaterial that we can't see, that are doing ground level research and data and sample collection right in front of our noses, right underneath us, and we just can't see them because it's very logical, and they should be at that size level doing stuff around. In fact, there's been lots of videos and cases even of giant triangles that'll have a red probe go down and around and go into a neighborhood and go do something and disappear. So I think there's a lot of these smaller things going around, and it could be happening around us when we have no fun.
We should create a movie, buddy. It's called They Live. Oh, I think that already was a movie. Sorry.
But
you're creeping me out a little bit here, but I imagine, you see, we just don't know, but it's suggesting this, especially these naval documents you've released a couple days ago. I don't know why this doesn't make the major news. This is a lot more important than some other stories we've heard recently.
But when we came out with there's so many stories that they're just not covering. This Malmstrom story from this year, January 24th of this year, and there was another giant half-acre size black UFO that approached Malmstrom. There was a power outage. It's a major, major case. It's such a major case, in fact, that when asked by New York Magazine, what are some of the most compelling cases, to ex-Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Harry Reid said in New York Magazine this year, read the reports, read the reports. There's cases every day. In fact, just this year, a few weeks ago, up in Montana, there was another strange deal at one of those missile bases. He didn't spell it out, so we went and looked into the documents, and there's only one, there's a report of it, but no other UFO channel was covering it. Nobody was covering it. For months, I've been yelling about that case. Ex-Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who helped found ATIP and helped do all this stuff, if he brings up that case, he knows something else happened. He knows that it was a nuclear missile was shut down or something. And he said, specifically, strange deal at one of those bases.
Strange deal.
Finally, a week ago, MUFON picked up the story, and now MUFON covered it. There's a couple channels, not channels, but websites that are covering it. That's a huge, huge story. People just aren't,
I just get the feeling that we're losing control of the situation. And I feel the longer this goes on and the more that the military denies it, the more we're going to find out that we're not in control by a long shot.
I think you're right.
You're right that it's a fractal distribution of craft from the mothership all the way down to the nano probes. Yep. The scale, folks. We're talking like
there's more smaller.
One year. That's what a fractal is. It's a branch and then branching and then little branches, and it's all over. It's sort of suggesting that planet Earth has already been completely infiltrated from top to bottom, and you're not seeing it because you don't know what to look for. It could be things out there that are, you see, I've always suspected that I don't want to do the math because it's late and it's freaking me out.
Scary. It's scary.
Listen, folks, you don't have to be scared. And a couple of videos ago, I pointed out that if you have a unique fractal dimension, which basically means you're following your excitement and things in life that make positive and feel good, you're going to be topologically protected from negative influences because you're kind of creating your own multiverse from your excitement. And I really believe this, by the way. It's when you're fractally flattened and you're routine and you're predictable that this stuff has a way to get to you because you're just like every other point. You know what I mean?
It sounds very logical.
So you don't have to worry about it if you're if you're being who you're supposed to be. That's why it's so important to take the risks to be the person you're meant to be in life. You know what I'm saying? Develop your abilities and skills. We can't do it for you. You just have to develop those things that make you really feel like a unique individual that come from the inside. Do you know what I'm talking about, buddy?
Absolutely. And I think it's like a nest. If you build a nest for something, it's going to come and live there. And if you build a nest for negativity, it's going to come and live there. If you think negative thoughts, it's going to come live there. If you think great thoughts and you build a nest for happiness, is going to come there and come to roost for a while.
I really believe that. This is not just new age speak like some of other researchers in the field have been saying. No, this is real. This is how it really works. I'm convinced of it. And so if you're listening right now, don't feel afraid of this. What we're talking about is a system where this large bureaucracy we've lived under for, ever since World War II, has gotten itself involved in a situation that it can't control, but it can't admit. And yet it's like it has to admit it, but it can't, and it doesn't know what to do. And it's kind of stuck just like the Soviet Union was before 1991 when it dissolved. It didn't know what to do. It was like a snake that had bitten off too large a chunk of something, but it couldn't swallow it, but it couldn't let go. And this is what we're talking about now with our own, for those of you in the United States.
That's a great analogy too. You know, I think a lot of us have seen videos of those, like, boa constrictors that tried to get an alligator that was too big. And this is too big for any government. And you know what? The phenomena is kicking back now. And maybe something big's coming soon, because now it's going straight at the military. It's not messing around. We're seeing big numbers.
That's why I wanted to talk to you today, and we actually ran into each other. It was that important.
I guess so.
What you're saying is true, and I'm just saying that because that's what I look.
Phew. I'm kidding. It's all fake. There's no aliens. There's no aliens.
No, buddy.
Aliens.
If what you're saying
aliens.
Is true, I approach everything this way, even my own thoughts. If what you're saying is true with this naval document that you've been sharing, and it's involved in this many naval exercises, which, I'll do the math, we know there are a couple hundred witnesses to the 2004 Nimitz Tic Tacs, right? Kevin Day said at least 20 per ship on 5 ships, and then someone else, I believe it was Foya Boy or some other one of your Twitter followers who I've started communicating with, shared documents with me of someone who gave a Facebook presentation who was on the Nimitz carrier group, and he said, no, it was actually a couple hundred. So you multiply a couple hundred by 20 naval exercises since, I don't know, how many are there? How many exercises are we talking about?
I don't even know, but a bunch. One exercise had it 2 different years. RIMPAC. I guess
I looked at, I saw that.
Pacific Rim.
There's had good maps, though. It showed us I liked your maps because it was very concrete and specific as to the regions. So I'm just saying, if you multiply hundreds by each exercise, you're talking about thousands of witnesses who haven't come forward yet. And that's potentially a destabilizing black swan type event if the media pick up on it. And there's, just several hundred for Nimitz alone. We've heard from Chris Mellon and Steve Justice and the TTSA people. But that's just a couple people. Yeah. We've heard from Kevin Day and David Sex-Fravor.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll hear from Lieutenant Alexander Dietrich soon.
Yes, and Commander Slate. Commander Slate, I believe is his name. Is that how you pronounce it, Slate? Who was the backseat guy for Fravor and back in the backseat in the F-18?
Mm-hmm. The weapons WAP officer or something like that.
Got it. And so then there were 2 planes, we're told, were up at the same time when Fravor was. So now we're talking 4 sets of eyes on these Tic Tacs, right? Am I right?
I believe so, yeah.
So you start doing the math, and you're talking about a lot of witnesses and a lot of evidence, and you mix it all together in this media world we live in 24/7. I just think it's only a matter of time before they realize, hey, when we did this in December, we had the most emailed articles ever in the history of our newspaper, according to the New York Times. So It's going to get picked up again at some point.
Yeah.
Some of these news hosts seem to bring it up on their own. Who's the guy from Fox?
Oh yeah, who has an extra fascination for it? Not Tucker Carlson.
Carlson, Tucker Carlson.
Tucker, okay.
He brings it up like, is it him or is it? Who's bringing that up? Is it his?
I think it's Tucker. But you know what? Think about when they launched this To the Stars in the first videos. It was 3 different newspapers at once, and that you have to prepare that and launch that like a battle plan. You have to be working with the reporters for months beforehand and have them all agree to do it on one day. And I think that took some special planning, and I think they can do that again with the next big information milestone. Like the release of the next 3 videos can come with something like that, and that could shock society. And I think we have to do it. I think the government has to do it, because I think the government knows there's going to be a situation that happens that the government can't suppress.
No, it's not just you and me and our listeners. It's Hal Puthoff, it's Steve Justice, and it's Chris Mellon. They're talking about the Sputnik moment. The Sputnik moment is when the other countries take a quantum leap ahead of you technologically because you haven't been doing your basic research.
Yeah.
They are saying the Sputnik moment, it's not us sitting here doing armchair conspiracy theorizing about what's going on. They are telling us, look, this is what they're telling us, folks. This phenomenon is real. We don't know where these vehicles are coming from. They're using advanced technology. And if we don't figure out a little bit of what's going on here, some of our adversaries are going to figure it out first.
Absolutely.
I think that's what the story is, just at the most minimal national defense level. They just told us about a year ago, folks, it's real. We're going to call it UAPs so we don't panic people. And if we don't do some basic research and start talking amongst ourselves about what in the world is going on here, we're going to lose this, whatever. I don't want to call it an arms race. It's not. It's some other civilization. The ramifications are too big. I don't even like using that. What do you feel, buddy? What do you feel about it?
I'm just so glad that they did. I'm so glad whoever in the DOD pushed it and said, yes, let's get the information out there at the expense of national security, because there's technology, major ramifications because of something you said in our last conversation about inspiring young minds. When a dad can now turn to their kid and say, look at this video. This is a craft that's not from this planet. This is a mystery. It's only able to be seen in infrared light. And someday you might be the guy who's flying one of these that we invent. Maybe that inspires a kid, but also at the same time, there's the big fear because of the Brookings Institute and the War of the Worlds, Orson Welles thing and all that stuff. But that was an attack. That was a radio play about an attack.
Right.
People dying.
Exactly.
And nowadays, stock market wouldn't stop for a day. There'd be no religious wars, no fighting in the streets, nothing. Trump could come out tomorrow and say, there's UFOs visiting us. We don't know what they are, but we've got over a 70-year history of peacefulness. So don't worry, everything's fine. Even if he did that, which of course he'd never do, nothing would happen. Nothing would change. Everyone would go to work. Everything would be fine, but we'd be inspiring the kids. We get our science machine rolling because these other countries are doing it. China's doing it. Russia's doing it. China and Russia are ahead in the psychic stuff. If you do any of this, looking at the research and the studies, they've made apparently huge advancements in this stuff. China is ahead in a lot of these small sciences. I think they're ahead in topological insulators, aren't they? Aren't they the international lead in topological?
They're really good at topological insulators, no doubt. These are these exotic materials that insulators and conductors simultaneously.
Materials and all their
exotic properties, quantum computers. Do you know that the Congress just authorized, $37 billion for a national quantum initiative? Did you hear this? The National Quantum Initiative, because a lot of other countries have national quantum computing centers to try to, this is the next big breakthrough, allegedly. Some people don't think it'll ever work, but there's a possibility that you could get these computers that work 1 million times faster because they're in a superposition. In other words, multiverse. These computers live in a multiverse with all the possibilities there, and they sort through them and boom, come up with an answer a lot faster because our computers are in one reality. That's the theory behind it. Now, Congress is getting into this, and I've been reading this, buddy, because quantum computing, National Quantum Initiative. The next step is National UFO Initiative. It's just a logical step in that direction. I mean, if the Congress can get involved with quantum mechanics and the Einstein Bohr debates and going through some of von Neumann's more obscure treaties on the nature of superposition, what's to prevent them from reading a few UFO books? And
I just wish. Yeah,
I'm kind of having fun with you, but you know what I mean.
No, of course. I wish every night, and I think it's going to happen at some point, every night on the news, they're going to be saying, in the UFO news tonight, we've discovered that for over 100 years, the visitors have had a factory on the far side of the moon. Astronomers admit that they had suspicions, but weren't willing to go public over 10 years ago. And every night there's going to be some different weird little bit of UFO news because it's such a solid fact and people want to know about it. And we've received new communications and hopefully we'll be able to explore a peaceful relationship in little bits and pieces, and that our planet will be able to digest excitedly because there's this other race, and there's so many questions.
But buddy, I like all that. It's just what makes it complicated is these visitors seem to just show up in people's homes and things without ringing the doorbell. Okay, let me just.
There's something weird. There's a zookeeper aspect where they don't have some respect.
Show up, and your government can't do anything about it. You can't stop it with your burglar alarms. They just show up they go through the wall. Okay, so that's weird.
They go through the wall, and like Luis Elizondo said, you lock up everything.
He said it.
And they leave the muddy footprints. And
exactly, in the morning, the muddy footprints are there, and it's a little freaky.
They went through the wall, just like you said.
The dog didn't wake up, and they came through the wall, and it's
kind of like the zoo animal being, going to sleep and waking up and I've got food again. Something magical happened every day. Okay, I'll just guess it's out of the intelligence of the animal, and it's out of the intelligence of our intelligence. This stuff could be right around us, just like that zoo animal.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding us that we're the weird ones. Maybe we're just too limited, and this is normal behavior for beings in a multiverse. This is so big deal. They go through walls. We're the weird ones because we don't know how to do that.
And we have much more limited senses. Their senses are obviously big. Obviously our sensors and our sensory equipment in the US and around the world is increasing vastly. We can detect stuff coming out of the atmosphere like we never could before. We can detect things moving at speeds. We have a resolution that it never had before. So this stuff and the evidence, we're really at a place of difficult deniability.
Difficult deniability. Again, as Hal pointed out to us at SSE IRVA, it's increasingly difficult to avoid looking at this data. That's paraphrasing him. He said it better than that. Basically, it's increasingly difficult to avoid with so many sensors out there and very sensitive equipment that pick up every little ripple in gravitational space-time evolution and everything. It's all measured. And
you know what? We could, if this whole conversation could come full circle, in a weird way, because the future is what we make it. It's what we think. It's what we dream. We make the future. And if we make a nest for negativity, if we make a nest for an apocalypse, if we fear for the apocalypse, we fear for that, it'll become a self-fulfilling reality. But if we make a nest for the dynamic nature of humanity, the vivacious spirit of humanity, that our love and our goodness outweighs our badness, our creativity and our dynamic, diversity outweighs our heartlessness and our sociopathy. If we keep all those positive things in mind and move forward and try and share and explain the powers of the mind as we try and grow as individuals, maybe we can self-create a better future. The other option is that the sociopaths win, and a humongous amount of the population in the future has horrible suffering because of finite resources and exponentially growing population. One of the two. Either there's hope or disaster, and I want to fight for hope. I don't know. I just don't want to submit to the inevitable disaster, the inevitable apocalypse.
I'm there with you, buddy. Well, there you have it, folks. I'm afraid an hour has gone by way too quickly.
That was very fast.
But we are going to have to call it quits for the moment, and we will continue. Is that right?
Yes, and we will not submit to an apocalypse. We will fight the apocalypse. We will fight to protect the biosphere. We will fight for positivity, and the sociopaths and the greedy who want to destroy, just for current pleasure. And
well, a lot's at stake here, and I don't feel we're going to make progress by ignoring it any longer. It just isn't going to work. We need to take some proactive stance here. CE5, meditation, anything you want to do to get in contact. I called it in my book Planetary Intelligence, but it's actually beyond planetary intelligence. That's just for a starter. Do you know where you live? Are you in touch with your planet? Are you in touch with being alive in the moment with this amazing place that we live? And then the next step is to go beyond that, to connect. And I think if we can do that each in our own way, we can create a positive effect. And this is not, some people have said this is sort of naive escapism. I don't think so. Because when you really connect to reality, you're involved, you're creating reality, you're taking responsibility. And it's this system we live in which teaches us to ignore and avoid and be afraid. To me, that's the escapism, right? It's the way we're taught to deal with these subjects, which is basically don't talk about it, don't admit it's real, and take people who experience it and accuse them of being delusional and having mental illness. To me, that's escapism. Okay, so I'm going to flip it around back the other way, back to those people who say we're being too positive. No, we're being realistic, because that's how you deal with challenging, difficult situations, is you at least begin to acknowledge that they're real. And then we can all, over the period of the next couple of years, Buddy and Doc and all of you, we will figure this out one step at a time, and at least present what the options are. Not necessarily we know what the right action is, but you see what I'm saying? And we can be adults about this and at least acknowledge it's real and stop running away from reality and just deal with the terror. I mean, deal with the challenge. All right, listen, Buddy, this is past my bedtime, so we're going to call it quits, but it's been fun, and it was fun running into you today.
It was really weird.
More questions, but we'll have to cover it in the next episode. How about that?
That sounds great, and I'm sure we will have that strange connection again somehow.
And for all of you, put your comments in the box below, whoever channel you're on, mine or Buddy's. We love your comments. I love reading these comments, and we love to respond.
Thank you guys so much for your time, and thank you so much, Dr. Hein. Always a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you, Buddy. Good night, folks, and we will talk to you again soon.
On the Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy.